Today, the world watches in awe and admiration as Volodymyr Zelensky steadfastly resists the wrath of Vladimir Putin and his Russian scourge, especially as it seems like the other world leaders weren't ready to take on the might of the Russian president. What's amazing about this fearless leader is that he's a far cry from his origins as a lawyer who somehow found his way to the hearts of many, not as an experienced politician per se, but as a performer who charmed his way into our hearts with the advent of social media. Who is this headstrong leader who refuses to bow to the presence of the Russian superpower? Is he a leader who is capable of resisting Putin and the might of Russia? Or is he just a clown who is in over his head? Let's show you what the world should know about Volodymyr Zelensky, lawyer, comedian, president. Early life. Long before he became any of these things we mentioned before, Zelensky was just a little boy that was born to a Jewish family on the 25th of January 1978 in Kryvyi Rih, a region that was in the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic. The son of Alexander Zelensky, a professor and computer scientist, and Rima Zelenska, an engineer, Volodymyr was a descendant of the victims of the Nazi Holocaust. Although his grandfather Simon Zelensky served as an infantryman during World War II, he was the only one of his three brothers who were unable to survive the German genocide of their people after their home was burned down during one of the German assaults. Simon's father would also be lost to this terrible time. Nonetheless, Volodymyr and his family were able to persevere. Although the family spent a 4-year stint in Erdenet, Mongolia due to Alexander's work, the family returned to Kryvyi Rih, where the young Volodymyr learned to speak Russian like any typical resident of the Ukrainian Dnipropetrovsk region. Over time, he took the classes he needed so that he could learn Ukrainian and English. As he approached adulthood, Zelensky enrolled in the Kryvyi Rih Economic Institute in 1995 so that he could study law under the Kyiv National Economic University. Despite maybe having a desire to become a lawyer at some point in time, Zelensky would begin to drift away from a legal career long before he graduated from the university in 2000. Entertainer. As we mentioned, even before Zelensky left the walls of his university, it was clear that he would never pursue a case in the court of law. That is because once the 17-year-old came across the Arts and Theater Society in his university, it was a wrap. After joining Kvartal 95, a performance group named after Quarter 95, Zelensky's childhood neighborhood, Zelensky embarked on a career in entertainment. The group went on to appear in the televised finals of KVN, a popular improv comedy competition, before being established as a stable of the show until 2003. Following this, Zelensky created a production company named after his group Kvartal 95. He will stay there as the artistic director until 2011, which is when he joined the Ukrainian TV channel InterTV as their general producer. Although he will leave InterTV to join the Ukrainian network 1+1 with his production company, Volodymyr will stamp his reputation as an actor by starring in historical farce Rzewski vs. Napoleon 2012, before going on to act in other rom-coms such as 8 First Dates 2012 and 8 New Dates 2015. Few would know that this would be the leader that would stand strong against the Russian superpower. Servant of the people. That said, the world would have gotten something of a foreshadowing when Zelensky starred as Vasily Goloborodko in the TV show Servant of the People. The world watched as a run-of-the-mill history teacher who gets thrust into a presidential race after going viral thanks to his tirade about political corruption in his country. Incredibly, Goloborodko would become the president of Ukraine after winning the presidential election by a landslide margin of more than 60%. The show made sure that it educated the world about the corruption in the real-life version of Ukraine by poking fun at some of the nation's oligarchical political elite. Zelensky was quoted to say that the only way to make sure the public rebuffed the current state of affairs in the country was to educate them in this new format. The show proved to be highly popular as Fox Studios purchased adaptation rights to the show, while Netflix decided to stream the show on their platform. What they did not know was that they were showing the world what was to come in just a few years. Unusual road to the presidency. Following the success of the show, Zelensky and his team at Kvartal 95 decided to create a political party named after their smash hit show. Now, running for presidency under the Servant of the People banner, Zelensky announced that he will be running for the office of the president in 2018. Interestingly, Zelensky decided to appeal to the people in a different approach. Rather than the long, drawn-out political campaigns that most politicians use to appeal to the electorate, Zelensky approached the people with the use of social media. While he was also sometimes seen at tours where he used his comedic chops to humanize himself to his people, his message still remained clear to the Ukrainians. He stated his intentions to curb the corruption that had permeated into their society. This unorthodox campaign helped Zelensky achieve an even more impressive victory than his famous character when he emerged from the 2019 election victoriously after winning 73% of the votes. After being sworn in May 2019, Zelensky sought to mend the strained relationship between Ukraine and Russia so that he can finally resolve the issues and disputes that were going on in the Donbass, a turbulent region in the Ukraine. Not everybody's a fan. Despite pledging not to let the people down, naysayers in the country and from the international community voiced their doubts about Zelensky's ability to fulfill his promises. For example, a local journalist named Olga Tokaryuk exclaimed that the president was only chosen by the people because he was popular with Ukrainians. She also went on to refer to the promises that Zelensky made as vague by pointing out that he made no concrete electoral programs. Elsewhere, Sarah Meagher, an international relations professor from the University of Melbourne, Australia, stated that she believes that Zelensky may have only gotten elected because Ukrainians were tired of their ineffective oligarchy elite. He represented a radical shift away from these corrupt leaders who had taken over their nation. And she wasn't the only one who believed that he was only voted in because they wanted something new and did not care about what that new thing was. Rule by social media. Despite this, the president has done his best to communicate with his people. However, rather than using traditional media routes, Zelensky took to social media platforms like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube to engage with the public. In fact, in his first year as the president, Zelensky mostly communicated with the public on the aforementioned social media platforms. Annoyed, the local media outlets in the nation murmured snidely that the president was attempting to run away from questions he would rather not answer. Questions like why he appointed members of his comedy troupe instead of the most qualified people like he promised during his campaign. Zelensky has attempted to counter this by holding a press conference that lasted for more than 12 hours in October 2019 as he dealt with questions from more than 300 reporters. Even now, as his country is embroiled in this conflict between Ukraine and Russia, Zelensky has continued to post on his social media platforms so that the world would know what the Russians are doing to his country. Trump and Zelensky. As much as he has tried to focus on healing his country, even Zelensky couldn't avoid the controversy that followed Donald Trump, the president of the U.S. Back in July 2019, Zelensky received a phone call from Trump which would play a huge part in the former president's first impeachment tribunal. Perhaps you could blame it on Zelensky's political naivety, but he has gone on record to say that he only got on that call so that he can ask for more aid from the U.S. Rather than releasing the $400 million worth of military aid that were allocated to the Ukrainians, Trump wanted to ask Zelensky to investigate Joe Biden and the Democrats as a favor. As expected, Trump denied ever doing anything wrong, despite never releasing those funds during his presidency. War was not his answer. Despite his all-out resistance to the Russian aggression, history will tell us that Zelensky never even wanted this war. Unfortunately, his belief that fixing things with Russia would not be as easy as he thought it would be. Despite trying to communicate with Putin so that the two nations could finally resolve their issues concerning Crimea and some other eastern Ukrainian territories, Zelensky would find that the Russian president didn't want to hear anything about that. Despite all attempts, the Russians refused to dialogue with Zelensky, despite growing concerns they had over 200,000 soldiers and combat vehicles on Ukraine's borders. Despite appealing to the Russians to avoid any conflict, Zelensky and the Ukrainians found themselves preparing for battle in the early months of 2022. Losing the people? As bad as the war is, it might surprise most to learn that Zelensky may also be losing his influence on his people. Even before the war, it seemed like his popularity ratings had dropped to 25%, perhaps due to the failure to resolve earlier conflicts like the one in Donbass. When you consider this and the fact that the nation was also experiencing economic problems, such as a surge in power and water, the simple matter is that Zelensky might be losing his people. For now, Zelensky is holding on against the Russians, and with any hope, things may be resolved in their favor. Until then, we hope that he may gain the experience to also shirk off the stench of his detractors. Maybe that way he may finally be able to deliver on his promises to the people of Ukraine. This brings our video to an end. Do you think Zelensky will prevail? Please tell us all about it in the comment section. Don't forget to like and subscribe as well. Until next time, goodbye.